What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's happening with the economic calendar going into tomorrow and what the charts are suggesting. But just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire community as a whole. So anyways, what's happening with the market so far is we saw SPY pump yesterday, approaching this resistance at this trend line. We rejected right over here. We got a retest. This was a very, very nice short opportunity. And instead of breaking through this to start pushing up to try to invalidate this much larger head and shoulders, right? SPY failed. We failed to break this resistance, and we got this little rejection right over here. So with that happening, now there's going to be another big test, right? We had the support here where this trend line was. We bounced off this, and then this time around, we're about to test this all over again. So I'll be watching to see, do we end up losing this support and start dumping lower, or do we try to get a bounce from here? I'll be watching that very, very closely, looking at the current trend. Now, today the market was red. We saw Nvda dumping, not to mention Apple, Google, Microsoft, Tesla, and Amazon. The list goes on. The majority of the stocks are in the red, but there were some stocks that were kind of flat, such as like JP Morgan, more in the finance sector. But for the most part, the market was more red as we started to see a lot more sellers step in. So why did the market sell off? There's two reasons why. The first thing worth mentioning is the fact that as far as our data went, the majority of data was actually decent when it comes to JOLTS, job openings, and job quits. But one thing the market did not like was this one right here, the ISM services prices. They're at 64.4 on the scale. This is above what we were expecting. So many companies are reporting that their services prices are going up, and this is not the best for inflationary data. So the way the market sees this is it's basically preparing itself for another increase in inflation. And in doing so, the Fed has given lots of warnings about how they're going to be shifting on their policies. The Fed initially said that they're going to continue to cut rates. Then, as of recent, during the last FOMC meeting, for 2025, Jerome Powell said that the Fed is going to limit how much they cut during the economic projections report. I mean, we had another report that came out that's suggesting this. So right now, the reports are saying that for 2025, okay, for January during the FOMC meeting, they're likely not going to be cutting rates. They're just going to keep them steady. And then there's about a 50-50 chance they're going to cut again in March. And then right now the plan is they're going to keep rates steady for May and June. And then there's now like another chance of maybe a cut in either July or September. So as we approach the month of September of 2025, that's many months away, there may be only like one or two cuts according to what this report is suggesting. Why? Because the Fed is preparing for another increase in inflation, and they're talking about how they have to take necessary steps to be very cautious during times like this. They believe it's very necessary to wait and see what the data gives us, and that's currently what the plan is. Now, plans could change depending on data, but just keep this in mind. This is going to be very important. This is why the market is selling off the way it is. Now, for earnings, okay, tomorrow we have very minor earnings in the morning. Then we have Jefferies announcing earnings after market close. For Thursday, however, the stock market is going to be closed, by the way, in respect of Jimmy Carter and his funeral. His funeral is going to be taking place on Thursday, so the stock market is going to be closed. So make sure you guys are prepared for that. Wednesday is going to be the last full trading day before a small break on Thursday. So just keep that in mind. And then the last thing is this, the fear and greed index is getting closer to extreme fear all over again. It was at extreme fear, bounced a little bit, and now it's getting closer to this fear all over again. So we're starting to see a little bit more fear building. Momentum is now at extreme fear because we saw the S&P 500 dump more, getting closer to its 125 daily moving average. So just keep that in mind. Besides that, the put to call option ratio is at greed. It is dipping a little bit as we're starting to see a little bit less put buying. We're starting to see more of them being closed. As that started happening, the market started dumping again. So when people started turning bullish and closing shorts, the market starts dumping again. So it's really just screwing over the majority of people out there. And then the VIX, this was starting to dip only to get a big bounce. I did say yesterday it's going to try to bounce, and we'll be watching to see if it rejects. As of right now, it's not ready for that rejection. So that being said, guys, I'm going to try to be quick for the end of this. As you guys can tell, I'm a little bit under the weather right now. I'm a little bit sick. I have a small cough. I'm trying to still get these videos out here, though, just to support you guys. So thank you all so much for your kind messages and all the support I've been getting. But I just want to continue to do this as fast as I possibly can. So as far as SPY goes, okay? We have a left shoulder, we have a head, and then we have a right shoulder. If we lose support right over here where this trend line is, there's going to be a risk of us dumping to these lows over here, very close to the low 580s, if not close to the high 570s. So there's going to be a risk of a much bigger drop if we lose that. And then if those supports fail us, this head and shoulders will play out, and we're going to be looking for a big dump into the 560s if that ends up happening. But we're not officially there yet. So what's going to happen tomorrow is this. I think the market's going to likely see a little pop and drop again towards this trend line. We're going to be testing support very close to about the 585 area all over again. And we have to see if we hold this or not. There is some data coming out tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be Wednesday, January 8th. We have initial jobless claims data coming out. Then we have the FOMC minutes at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we have a couple of hours of trading. Then we have the FOMC minutes. That's going to cause some high volatility tomorrow. So we'll see if we get some kind of bounce off of that or not. If not, that could cause even more downside. So what I suspect is that we pop a little bit, we retest the low 590s, then we could be looking for another rejection within a retest of this support right over here. And then we'll have to see, does SPY get some kind of bounce here? Do we do something like this where we just pop a bit and start dipping right here? We have to bounce like this to turn back up into the 594 area. And we have to get a bounce off this support here. If SPY does not hold the support near 585 and we don't hold it right over here, there's going to be a risk of this dumping all the way back down to about 580. So that's going to be the big move for tomorrow. That's going to be what our big test is going to be. Do we bounce off support or not? I'll be watching that very closely. So look for a pop and a drop back down towards 585, and we'll see if we bounce or not. So please keep that in mind. For others out there, we have ES. ES is also on a bit of a downtrend. We're technically making lower highs and lower lows. As you can see, we're just continuing to fall here. I think we have a very similar setup. So we need to reclaim 6,000 to turn back up. If we can't do that, there's going to be a risk of this dumping to about 5,900 flat. I think this might be dipping a little bit more towards the 5920 area, so it might be a small dip on ES, and we'll see if we bounce off that support or not. If not, 5880 is coming. So look for a little bit more downside, and we'll see if we bounce off 5920. So I still see a bit more downside, and we'll see what the reaction is depending on our data. For Nvda, we got this big red bar. Typically, those are followed by more downside, but we're testing previous resistance becoming support around that 140 area. If we break past 143, we're looking for essentially 146. And if we end up losing support at 140, we're looking for 137.5 and eventually 132. Overall, we're technically on a big rejection on Nvda, but typically what happens when you get these rejections, it tries to rebound a bit. So it might be a retest of 143 or so in the low 140s. And if we get a rejection, we're going to be continuing to dump back down to 138 or below. So I expect a small bounce to 143, then maybe a rejection near our 20 EMA, and that would take us back down towards our 200 EMA for a little bit more downside. For Bitcoin, we're holding support at 96,500. As long as this holds, we're going to be looking for 97,800. I think we might attempt to test this, and if we get a rejection, we're going to be dumping back down to 95,000. I also want to mention that as far as Bitcoin goes, we have this big red bar here. This is a break of structure right here. So that tends to suggest there might be a little bit more downside. So I'm looking for 97,800 as our resistance. If this rejects, we're going to be looking for a bigger dip. So please keep that in mind. As far as Tesla goes, we're technically on a downtrend, making lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows. And we're approaching the support right here. So just like SPY, we have a support that's coming up. This is critical support for Tesla. We're going to be watching this test right here. It tends to push in the mornings, just like how it pushed in the morning, then dumped, pushed in the morning and dumped for the last couple of days. So look for a push in the morning towards maybe just under 400. Then it could be dumping back down right here towards this trend line. It's going to be very close to the high 380s. So I think we're going to be testing that. And then we'll see, does Tesla get a bounce back up towards 410? If we reclaim that, we could turn back up. Or do we end up rejecting if we fail to hold the 385 area around that range? There's going to be a risk of us dumping towards 380, then 375. So watch this support here. Do we bounce or do we reject? This is the move I'm going to be looking for, a little pop and drop to start things off, and a little bit more downside for Tesla. Then we'll see if we get some kind of bounce or a rejection. That's going to be very, very key. As of right now, the trend does favor the downside a little bit more, so we'll see about that just to be safe. For NQ, same thing. It looks a little bit more bearish. We're technically making lower highs as we're rejecting off this trend line. If we reclaim 21,500, we turn back up. And if we can't, we're looking for a dip back down towards 21,250. So watch that very closely. I presume what's going to happen is this. We may rebound a little bit right over here, back up to about the 21,400s. Then we could reject and start dipping back down to this imbalance. So I do think we might be tipping a little bit more on NQ to about the 21,250 area. And we'll see if we get a bounce off that or not. So watch for that. But there might be a little bit more downside coming to start things off. And we'll see if we get a bounce. The QQQ has not visited the 200 EMA yet. It's very close. So tomorrow we're going to be looking for a move like this, where we might be coming back down to our 200 EMA here. We'll see if we get a bounce back up to break out to turn bullish, or if we end up rejecting and losing support. Watch the two supports at 512 and 507. If the QQQ dumps to 512, we'll see if it bounces or not. If it does not bounce on 512, we're dumping to 507 or below. So please keep that in mind. For Aapl, Apple's on a downtrend right over here. We're looking at the support around this 241 area. If we lose that, we're looking for a dump to 238. So if this holds, we could be trying to bounce for 245. Overall, I do expect this to test 241. We'll have to see if it bounces. This is going to be critical support. If not, we're looking for a dump to 238. So watch those levels just to be safe. That's going to be key for the way we move tomorrow. For a few more, we have Netflix. It's holding support quite well. It might attempt to bounce for 886 tomorrow, and we'll see if it rejects, but look for attempts to test 886, and then it might just consolidate after that. For the Russell, it's still looking a little bit weaker. We might be on our way down to lower levels because we got this bearish divergence and rejection. We haven't officially broken structure right here, so it still has potential to dip to about 220 before it tries to bounce. If we lose 220, we turn a lot more bearish. So keep that in mind. We're watching that very closely. For Coinbase, I want to say that there is this gap down here that's unfilled at 248, and it looks a bit more bearish. Typically, it rebounds in the mornings to get back up to 268 or so. Then it might reject and continue to fall. We have this imbalance down here at 259. If that fails us, we're looking for that gap support right around 256. And then if that fails us, we dump down to about 248. So keep that in mind. There's some downside risk. Same thing with Amzn. We have some gaps to fill down here. Might rebound for 223 or so before it rejects and starts dipping to 220. And we'll see if we bounce or not. We're technically in a range. This is like a bearish setup, but we like to get bots back up around 218 to 220, and we tend to reject around 230. So we'll see if we dip a little bit more towards 218 to 220. We'll see what happens from there. Meta could also be dipping to about 611 to 606, and we'll see if we bounce or not. But I favor downside a little bit more for that 611 target. So look for a little bit of a dip to 611 to 606, and we'll see if we bounce. For Microsoft, we're on a bit of a downtrend right here. So I think that technically this does favor downside a little bit more. This move typically leads to like us to retest these lows down here. So there might be an attempt to get back up to this imbalance at 424, but if we can't reclaim 425, this will likely push, then reject, and start dipping to about that 420 area. So keep that in mind. And then Google might be retesting 195. If we bounce off this, we could try to get back up to 198. If we don't hold 195, we're looking for 193.5. There's a tough resistance here, so if 195 fails us, we're looking for 193.5, and we'll see what happens after that. With that being said, the VIX is trying to break out here, but it's at some tough resistance. So will this come down a bit? Will the market rebound to start things off? And then even if it does, will the VIX continue to break out? That's not guaranteed until we see our data. As of right now, the charts look a bit more bearish. So I do think we might see a little bit more downside, but we'll see if the market bounces off critical support. So for example, like I said before, yes, we could dip a bit more on Tesla, but we're approaching this very, very critical support where this trend line is. We'll have to see if Tesla holds that or not. So I would recommend just trying that out. And then the same thing with SPY, we're trying to hold this trend line of support, might pop and then dip towards it a little bit more, but then we'll see if we get a bounce or if we get a rejection. That's going to depend on this big test. So watch for that big test tomorrow. You guys have to kind of like watch these levels yourselves to see if we get the bounce, because I can't always be there in real time to give you guys every update. So that's why it's very important to watch these levels and watch my technicals. You guys could just kind of copy this down and then see the levels just on your own. And then that's the very important thing about independence. I can't make the trades for you. That's your job. You have to just use my data, my analysis as a guide for how you're going to go about things for tomorrow. So I hope that's as clear as possible. I wish you all the best, guys. Thank you all so much for listening. I'll try my best to upload more videos tomorrow. Hopefully I do recover very quickly from my illness. It's very minor. It's not too terrible. I still feel fine for the most part. I just have like a cough and a stuffy nose, but hopefully I recover very quickly. And I wish you all the best, and thank you so much for your kind messages in the comments section. I'll be back tomorrow with another update before market open, hopefully. With that being said, have a good rest of your day, guys, and peace out.